Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful night of Chewin the BBQ Fat. I am so excited tonight's show. This was supposed to be last week's show, but I rudely double booked, and then everything fell through for me last week. And Aaron has been so gracious to come on tonight again so we can have our discussion that we were going to have. But I'm very excited tonight to have Aaron with Texas Oil Dust on. Couldn't be more excited about his products and about everything he has going on out there. Not only is he a product developer, sells all this kind of stuff, but he's also an incredible cook team. So I'm excited to get into it. If you will like the page, share the page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, whatever you need to do, that'd be awesome. But go ahead and get as many shares out there as we can so this can hit as many people as possible. But anyway, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Give you an opportunity. Once you have an opportunity to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, and then we'll get started.
All right. Well, I'm Aaron Lesley. I'm the owner of Texas Oil Dust. Barbecue team, seasonings, injections. We've got a sauce coming out pretty soon. We've been competing about 5 years. On circuit wise, 5 years. We did a few early with the family, but it was a lot of fun. Back when barbecue was just a weekend getaway. I've been a catering company since 2012. That's how we got started, cooking steaks, for the oil field guys out on the rigs and locations. So we've kind of progressed from one thing to another to where we're at today. It's kind of been a fun journey, but that's kind of what we do. We just put all those irons in a fire. Then of course, I'm partners with Midland Meat Company, and we have the half acre, and I cook the barbecue over there for those guys. So use our seasonings, every day throughout the day, 7 days a week, pretty much.
Now, is that Fred?
Right.
Is Fred?
No, that John Scarborough owns Midland Meat Company.
Okay. I think he sells their product or something, right? Doesn't Fred do that?
Yeah, I think Fred does some things in the store. He'd have to comment on that. And then, but he's also part of the Midland Meat Company team.
Okay.
There's 5 or 6 guys that cook their meat all over the place. So, world champion briskets to American Royal Champion. Midland Meat Company beef's had a hand in all that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. So I'm still trying to share the page. Real quick, tell me what let's see. Let's talk about your product. So we won't get into your weekend yet. Where all have you been? How did you come about deciding you wanted to develop rubs and injections and sauces and everything?
Well, I can tell you in 2012, I was a assistant superintendent out in the oil field for one of the drilling companies here in town. And part of the bonus program that we did for if you drilled a well, we said, okay, an average well was 18 to 26 days. If you drilled a well under a certain amount of time, we're going to give you something to look forward to, right? So a bonus. So we were feeding those guys ribeye steak dinner, the sides, baked potatoes, mashed potatoes, whatever the side was, dessert, salad. So 50 or 60 guys a day had a bonus. And that bonus was a good meal in the middle of nowhere that you could, instead of eating Spam and crackers or Vienna sausages, that kind of thing. Ramen noodles, tossed it out. We just had steak. And we couldn't find anybody to do that on a continuous basis. It was going to taste good. So I told the guy that I was working with, I said, hey, I can do that. I got a pit, cook it over mesquite, and we'll just knock them out of the park. So went out one day. I started cooking steaks. I did 60 the first day. Next week, he called me back and said, hey, can you do that again for those guys? And so that's what I did. And then 3 years later, we were cooking 500 steaks a week. And
wow.
Just out of a little trailer pit that we had and, helping those guys out. So I developed. So this one here, this is the oil dust. This is the first rub that I made. It's the all-purpose. Used to be the steak seasoning. Everybody calls it the steak seasoning. But we use it on everything. So in 2013, I couldn't afford to buy all the rubs on the market to cook the steaks with. We're doing so many. So we sat in the kitchen for about 3 months, and every time we cooked, we just add a little bit more to the recipe. And we finally found something that we liked, that all the roughnecks and company men and tool pushers and so forth, they like the flavor of those steaks. So that's how that got created, and it was out of necessity, wasn't out of anything else. Put it in a bottle so we could give back to charity. And instead of having to use our paychecks on Fridays and every month, we just took some of the proceeds from this. I'd buy more rub to stock up the shelf, and then we would give a certain amount to whatever charity come along, whether it's breast cancer, $20 here, $50 there, raffle, something. We would just purchase that back. So that's how we gave back to everybody. And that oil dust is what started it, but it was only because we had to have something to put on the steak.
Gotcha. So that was your first one. The oil dust was the first rub. What did you come out with next? Did you come out with all the rubs, or did you come out with the injections?
No. So I'm one of those guys that I only believe in putting something out that that you need, something that it isn't something to put a rub on the market. And everybody has a reason for putting something in a bottle. The Barnyard Pimp, that was the very next thing. So one day I didn't have, I was using 2 or 3 different rubs on chicken. We do a half chicken and IBCA.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I was in San Angelo, Texas, about 2016. I sat there, pulled a bunch of stuff out of my cabinet, mixed up a little of this. I wrote it down, of course. You want to know what you're doing. So I wrote it down. It tasted good. So I used that same recipe for the next 6 months. I had bashed it every Saturday for the cook-off. I went on a roll with first place chickens for about 6 or 8 of them in a row. That kind of went, might have been a second, could have been a third, but it was something that was hitting. And out of just one freak deal on a Saturday morning, I needed a rub, and that's what I made. Once I passed it out to a few guys, they started whooping me in chicken. I started taking the back seat, and we stuck it in a bottle, and it's been going on ever since. That was kind of a fluke thing that happened, but I needed something that day, so we made it, and it's been working.
I love that Barnyard Pimp. I think it's an incredible rub. I like the name of it too. I like the name.
There's a funny story behind that, but I'll have to tell it to you one day because it might be a little long.
I got you. That's pretty cool. So what's next? When did Piggy Bank come about?
So Piggy Bank was the 4th rub. Again.
Well, what was third then? Let's go with third.
Okay. Well, the 3rd rub was the Black Gold.
Okay.
This was the brisket rub. So I don't experiment at home. I don't cook briskets, ribs, chicken at the house for any reason unless it's a catering job or somebody wants it. So I sat there one afternoon. People were using. I have another rub that's I used to call it buckshot rub. And so I took this rub right here. I added a few things to that particular rub that I used because there wasn't any MSG. It was gluten-free, and I could use it on my catering. So I took that rub and I added some pecan flavoring to it. I think I bought it at the Barbecue Superstore. I was online. I said, hey, that sounds pretty good. And the guy told me, hey, you ought to try this stuff. So I took it. I went to a contest as a state championship, about 70-plus teams. I added the pecan flavoring to that rub I already had that I made at home for catering. I threw a little MSG in it, and I hit first place brisket. I said, well, that's pretty good. I like that, and it tasted good, right? So we went on again and again and again. And so those things kind of took place in the making what I have now. So the Black Gold was kind of created from a few helpful hints from some people. Said, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I tried it in a cook-off. It hit, and then I won that cook-off. So I rode with it, and that's where it's at. The pecan flavoring is synthetic, right? So it's not a natural nut. So you're not going to have an allergic reaction to it. At the same time, it's not going to be something that it blends in with the meat, so you don't taste that pecan aftertaste. It's not real sweet, so the synthetic part of it isn't. But it's got that coarse pepper that kind of pulls in, heats it up just a hair, but you still get the right amount of salt, garlic, spices that go in there. So this right here mixed with the Wildcatter, which we'll talk about in a second. The Wildcatter and then a little bit of the Barnyard makes a hell of a brisket.
Nice. All right, so we've got the three for originals or whatever, and then you came out with piggy bank afterwards because y'all don't do much pork in Texas. There's not much pork going on, right? Is there any pork in BCA other than
not anymore?
The
so there's a few contests that do have pork around the state, different sanctioning bodies. IBCA doesn't recognize pork as a fourth meat anymore. That changed in 2019. So at the time it was made for piggy bank. It was made for pork, and so the piggy bank, I sat there again like the Barnyard Pimp. One day we had a pork and a rib, and chicken and brisket. So I looked in my toolbox. I didn't have the rubs that I needed. So I said, well, I bet I can make the same flavor I was using. I had a combination of 5 different rubs. And so I just kind of threw some things together, tossed it around, shook it up, put it on top of the pork butt, and I hit first place pork butt, first place ribs. So it actually it wasn't that. I was probably like a first rib and a second butt. I think it was like 35 points or something. But so yeah, I've been running with it ever since. But it was kind of a makeshift deal because I didn't have what I needed. Didn't check my cabinet, didn't order my stuff in time. So that's kind of where that came from. And then we just kind of played with it a little bit, brought the heat, so the heat kind of carried over in the cooking process, but it wasn't real sweet. I add enough sugars, enough honeys. There's enough sugars in our recipe that we didn't need a really sweet rub to keep adding sugars to it. So I backed off the sugar a little bit to bring out the smokiness and the heat to go with it, and that's where I left it at. So it may not be as sweet as some wanted a little sweeter, but by the time you add some brown sugar, add some honey, whatever else you're putting in your rib wrap or on your pork, you're going to have that same sugar content no matter what. So that's kind of where that one came out.
That's awesome. I've used all your rubs. I think they're all great. And it's interesting to hear how they come about because it's pretty. You never know. People always ask us what is this used for? What is that used for? Was it developed? We don't know. But we'll get the people on to talk about it. So, love hearing that. So, what other rubs do you have?
So, the last rub that I have is my Wildcatter. That's a garlic rub. This is phenomenal. Anybody in the house is going to want this. If you have something that you want to put garlic on, it's smooth, it's savory, it's not real salty, so it's not going to carry itself out. But if you have vegetables, butter, zucchini, squash, you have seafood, chicken, it does great with the chicken and the Barnyard Pimp. You mix those two together, gives you a great base, great flavor. At the same time, it goes awesome in your injections. So some of you guys are trying to figure out what brings an injection and makes it pop, what makes it come to the next level. So some guys add a lot of stuff to wraps. Some guys add stuff to the injections, and you can take a tablespoon of this and put it in your chicken injection, and it's just going to kick it up. Depending on what state you're in, for this KCBS, some like it sweeter. You get up in the Midwest or even over towards the East, and they might like a more of a savory chicken. This is going to help get you where you want. I've had 2 180 chickens in KCBS in the last probably 6 or 7 events. And this and the Barnyard Pimp and our Calcutta has been the main reason for that.
Yeah. So let's get into your injections.
Sure.
That's where I learned about Texas oil dust. That was where I got into trying the Calcutta, and then I got on the Calcutta. So what can you tell me about? Let's just start with chicken. We'll go with Calcutta since you just brought that up. It's completely different than a lot of the other injections. It's got a different flavor. I think it's great. How did you come up with Calcutta?
Okay, so when you sit there and you go to classes, whenever we first started, I didn't inject chicken. I didn't know you're supposed to inject chicken, or that you really could. So as you YouTube and you search things, you take a class. The first class I took was Travis Clark's class. So before I went to American Royal in 2016, I took his class so that I could get a better idea of what KCBS was about.
Right.
I had done one. I think I'd done one event, and that was one of those things that you're mixing some chicken stock. You're trying to mix a little bit of better than bouillon chicken, or you're trying to use some the seasoning for ramen noodles, or you're trying to figure out how can you get that savory chicken flavor that tastes better than just bland chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes just plain chicken wins, and sometimes a souped up chicken wins. So as I mixed all of these store bought things that you can walk down to any local grocery store, and we brought it in, we started coming up with a recipe that was had a little bit of savoriness to it, a little bit of onion and garlic. Had a great chicken stock, something that was based on. So once you figure out how to take all of those liquids, and I actually asked for some help on this, but once you take some liquids and you try to figure out a powder form, that's tough. It's tough to go from a liquid to a powder. And so when you're doing that, you're trying to make sure that you get all of the right ingredients to pop and come out. And the more you use, the more savory, the saltier it can be, or the more you use, the stronger it can get. So trying to get that down took me about a year of using the Calcutta, using even my beef and my pork injection. But it took some time and about probably 6 months of cook-offs continuously to get the chicken injection where it needed to be, so that you can make sure that what the ingredients you had was the same as what you were putting in from the store. It's
Right.
one of the toughest things. If you had a liquid injection, and you could probably get someone to bottle it from a barbecue sauce company or some kind of liquid company, you could probably make that. But powder lasts longer. Once you open it up, you ain't got to keep it refrigerated. And as long as you keep it in a good storage place, you're going to be all right. So the chicken injection wasn't as tough as the beef injection to make, because I already had a basis on where to start. It was just took us a little bit of time to get the right ingredients and the right mixtures.
Gotcha. So how would you describe Calcutta compared to different chicken injections on the market?
So one thing about mine is that people will tell you the more you mix, the thicker it gets, and that's true. We have a sorghum powder in there. We increase the sorghum powder so that I don't. When that chicken starts to get hot, it's like rigor mortis, right? It starts to tell, and your wing or your thighs kind of swell. And when you start injecting your birds, whether it's legs or thighs or halves, that chicken swells. It's going to hold that injection. I wanted something to be able to make it last longer inside the chicken. I wanted to bring a aspect to it that it didn't just run out. And so as it's cooking, it's dripping. And I wanted to make sure it was going to hang in there and last that beginning stage as that chicken swelled up and it got the temperature started to rise. It wasn't going to just drip out and then go all in the bottom of your drum or your smoker. So that's one thing that we have, is that I have a little thicker juice, so it hangs itself in there. But the second thing we've got, it's really fine. It's a fine powder, so it's going to mix well. It's not going to clump real easy, and it's not going to be granular, so it's not going to have some chunks that might hang up your needles or clog up your injection guns. And that's kind of the parts that set us aside from just the other stuff. And it doesn't have a chemical flavor. Doesn't I mean? And I haven't used a whole handful of injections. Once I started mine, I stay with mine. I use all of my products, so everything that I do is 100% me. It's not anybody else. So I try to make sure that what I'm using is going to be as good for me as it's going to be for you or anybody else that wants to pick it up.
So what do you recommend mixing the Calcutta with?
I personally like chicken broth. Um, some people don't like chicken broth; they think it's too meaty. If that's a good description, but it might be a little too bold, so they'll use water. So if I'm going to do chicken, I use the same recipes in IBCA, Lone Star, or KCBS. So if I'm going to do something, it's going to be chicken broth. I'm going to run, 20 ounces of chicken broth, and I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of of my cluck cut in there, and I'm going to mix it up, and I'm going to add about a half a stick of butter, and I'm going to toss it in a bird.
Okay.
And and I just gave you the recipe and what I would be using this next weekend if I was in Osage.
Okay. What about the Wildcatter? Would you add any of that to it also, or not?
Yeah. So I that's my fault.
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
I
I'm
would
just
take the
curious.
Wildcatter. I mean, I should have told you that, but there's a there's a few other things that I would probably put in there. So I
Don't tell
like
me
my
everything.
triple X. I mean, I like my triple X. It's straight up MSG. There's no dancing around it. But this is a corn based MSG. It's not salty. You can put as much as you want. It won't change the flavor. It won't add salt to it. It's not like Accent, Ajinomoto. It's not like any of those other ones that have a salt layer to them. This is a really fine powder, so I will take a tablespoon of this and toss it in my injection. And it's
Okay.
going to make your spit taste good. So it's going to pop at the same time. It's going to bring that take all those extra flavors inside. It's going to really accentuate them. And then put a little bit of that wildcatter in there too, and you're going to have a great garlicky, savory injection for your bird.
So I do not carry. I do not think. I'd have to ask Ellen. The triple X, and I think the Wildcatter is new. I don't know if we've got any of that in since we weren't yet, but
Yeah,
I'll have to make
I
sure
don't
we
know
get.
if it's been a while.
Ellen does all that, so she's in.
Sure.
Everybody here knows Ellen runs the Atlanta barbecue store. So I'll have to make sure that that triple X is intriguing to me because I love MSG and I love the being able to. Um, I think that's a great product. But anyway, that's good to know that we got. So we've got all kind of secrets. Thanks, everybody's thanking you for telling secrets, and they appreciate that. I'm intrigued by the butter, but anyway, I'm going to move on past that because we don't want to get too much of what you do. So let's move on to the pork cut. That would be your next. Well, I guess that's next.
Yeah, well, it can be. I mean, the very first product I came out with was my beef injection. Um,
I was going to save
but
that for
this one,
last because that's my favorite.
that's all right. But this one here is our pork injection. Um, we use this on ribs. We use it on pork butts. It's the same aspect as my chicken injection. Once I inject it, it swells up. It stays in there. I'll keep pulling it out and I'll keep injecting until I get all that injection that I've mixed in the pork butt and in my ribs. Um, I'm a little more conscientious about my ribs, putting how much injection I put in there versus my pork butt, right? Because you want to keep it as moist as possible. And we're
Right.
cooking such a small pork butt, anyways, 4.5 pounds or so, that by the time you have that small piece of meat and you're injecting it all, I'm just going to continue. 4 butts, I'm gonna make quite a bit, but I'm going to make sure it hits the right points. But it's going to be that same way. But one thing that pork Calcutta has that a lot of injections don't, it's got a, I call it Sunday dinner at grandma's house. When you walk in and grandma's got a pork roast in the big crock pot or in the oven, got carrots and potatoes and onions, and I mean, you got that good broth. When you get done, you can take that broth and you can use that as your base layer for your injection, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's kind of where you feel at, and that's what my pork injection reminds me of. It's Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house. Everything I do, and if I've ever talked to you, you'll know that I'm nostalgia. I like to think about my past and what I did in my past and what brought me to where I'm at today on cooking. And that pork Calcutta gives me my grandmother's pork roast flavor, and it puts it in a pork butt. And I've had very good success in KCBS in these last since we started cooking them, over the last 10 or so events with my pork. And I've had good rib calls, but I've had phenomenal pork calls, and that gives me a flavor that nobody's used to.
Right.
Can't
I think that's
complain.
one thing that's all of your cuttas, pork cutta, club cutta, cow cutta, they all have a different flavor than some of the other injections. And that's one reason I was excited about having you on so we could talk about that, where that came from and how you do it. How do you like to mix your pork cutta? Do you just go straight with the thing?
No, no, actually, I like fruit juices. Um,
Okay.
I like I think citrusy flavors go well with pork, whether it's peach, mango, peach mango, pineapple mango, peach, whatever you. I mean, whatever fruity flavors you can get. I do not stay. I don't use apple juice, um, but I do like pork flavored juice. I mean, not pork flavored. I do like the like oranges. peaches, and mango, pineapple. Those 4 go well with pork. So I like to use any one of those 4 mixtures as my base liquid for the pork injection. You can add water to it if it's too much, too strong. But the very first time I used that, I hit that 5th place rib in the American Royal in the Open back in 16. And when I started mixing that particular recipe, I used it, and that was my rib injection. And I hit that 5th place rib. I think Travis had a 1st place rib, and I was excited because I was up on the stage, and that was a big call. But that flavor really carried it out, and using those in juices is what I stay with. So it doesn't
Right.
matter. It just depends on what's on the shelf. If it's a double header, I'm going to try to have a lot of peach juice in my trailer. You can buy it by the case or the big jugs, but any one of those particular juices mixed in with that. Now this is where I have a lot of conflict because the directions on here are for 2 pork butts. Those are full size pork butts, 10, 12-pound pork butts, bone ends. So this is just for at the house and backyard flavor. If you're going to do a competition, not very many people follow the recipe on a can. If you're using the recipe on the bag to make your stuff, then you probably haven't been doing it very long, and you're not really substituting what you think it should be. So, I don't like very much of the injection in my pork rub. It needs to be enough to make it taste good, but not be overpowering. So you have to figure out that medium on how much you're doing, how big your ribs are, how big your pork butts are, and then you go from there and adjust. But I don't. I mean, I don't use more than 28 ounces of liquid, period, in any of my injections. So that's my base. Without giving my recipe away, that's my base liquid, and I try to keep it under, in 1 jug.
And how many pork butts do you normally cook?
I cook 4.
Okay.
I cook 4 butts on the drum.
Okay. We're going to get to that to a second, but what you cook on. But let's finish up with your Calcutta. I would say that is the product that opened the door to Atlanta Barbecue Store with Texas Oil Dust was Calcutta. Came across that, and then we just brought in most of the line. I thought it was all of it. Apparently we didn't. So we have work to do. But anyway, tell me a little bit about Calcutta. I love that.
So we sat around. I started this recipe in 2016 when I first started kind of competing. This was stuff off the shelf, just like my chicken injection. You've got Better Than Bouillon was out. It was a great roasty flavor, beef broth, and so I sat there in the camper. I was like 65 foot long. I had a pop up camper. I had my pit behind there, hauling the golf cart. I mean, I look like Beverly Hillbillies, but a saucepan I would mix up, and then I would taste it, and then I would mix a little bit more, and I'd taste it, and I boiled it, got it good and hot, and then I'd cool it off, and I inject my brisket. So that recipe is what spawned the Calcutta. Trying to find a name that was kind of catchy. Trying to find something that everybody has a trail. Everybody's got a theme, and I think everyone that's creative has a really good thing they've come up with, and they stay with that, and it's very creative for me to do that. So I went on a huge brisket run, 16 and 17. Every time I turned around, I could throw a brisket and it hit first place. And I was using this, but nobody else had it. When you don't have a product on the shelf and nobody's even using it, people are starting to ask you, what are you using? What are you doing? So there was a Calcutta. The cookers are standing around. They're making money off of these cooks out there. And that's how the name Calcutta came out, because it's a moneymaker. It's what gets you that money. It's what gets you paid. You'd be walking last in a heartbeat, and that's where that name came from. And so I just swapped the A and the L and threw the O and the W, and here we go. It's a moneymaker. I won the Calcutta that night, and ever since then, it's just been a name that stuck with me, and that's how we got that product started. Gave it to some friends. Same story. Give it out. 6 or 8 guys are running it. Next thing you know, you're taking back seat, and then you got to figure out how can I beat them. So you got to up your game, and then you just keep going and going and going. So once it spread, that's been an injection It got us started in the injections. At the same time, it got us the familiarity with the rest of the products is that beef injection.
So what would you say
Something
the
that not for me.
what would you say the flavor profile is on the
So
Calcutta?
it's silky. It's real beefy. It's a very silky beef, but and it's thick. Okay, this one's probably the thickest one out of all of them. When you slice that brisket, when you got a nice brisket, and everybody calls them jigglers, right? Because they slap them, they jiggle. Depending on what contest you're running, and you slice into it, the minute you see that juice just start to expand on that cutting board, you get excited, right? Now you start to hold the knife with two hands. Now you're trying to make sure that, okay, shoot, I don't want to screw this up because this might be a good brisket. When I sit there and slice that brisket up, I can see the amount of juice that's in the bottom of that brisket. And so with that being that indicator is giving me say, hey man, all the way through I'm slicing this thing and this juice just keeps expanding. That kind of gives me that feeling that hey, I'm fixing to have a good product, and I have to take care of my business, or I might sit here and just sit on the back of the table and not get out of my chair.
Right.
So it's I mean, it's thick. As that brisket swells, it stays in there. People call me all the time. They say, Aaron, I got little bitty holes on the top, like little bitty mounds of injection coming out. I say, keep it going, because as that brisket swells, it's going to push that injection out. That injection's staying in there, and it's going to move, it's going to travel, it's going to constrict, but then it's going to give you a really good bark. So that thing's going to keep sweating. And as it sweats, that injection comes out the top, and it just keeps giving you a bark. It just keeps giving you moisture. You're spritzing already, I'm sure. Some guys
Right.
use water. Some guys use Crawford's beef spritz. Some guys have their own. I have my own. But I mean, at the end of the day, that brisket's going to keep sweating, going to give you a good bark. So those things add to the overall appearance of what I'm looking for. So that's the reason. That's the first one I came out with, and it's been the best one since because of that reason. It stays in there. They don't come out. It ain't going to drain the bottom of your drum or your smoker.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. So that does. I'm going to ask you the question of when do you make your injections?
So
Because I've noticed the longer, like when I make the Calcutta, if I make it on Wednesday, it's a lot thicker than when I'm injecting on Friday afternoon, right? So
sure.
do you make them early in the week? Do you wait till later in the week to make
It
them?
depends on the schedule. So, with the restaurant and the amount of time that we've had to prepare, and some of these cooks we've gone to, like Kansas City, Missouri, Wyoming, those are some we have to leave on Thursday night, some we have to leave on Friday morning at 5. So, depending on where you're going, I try to mix them Monday or Tuesday. Um, Here lately, I haven't been able to do it until I got to the cook-off, so it might be a late night for me. Um, there's always been a saying that you can't mix your injections too early because of the phosphates and some of the stuff that's in there. It can turn on you. Well, I know for a fact that you can go 2 or 3 weeks and still use that same injection and still do great. If not, win the contest. I have proof of that, but you still taste it to make sure something hasn't changed. And to me, it hasn't. Nothing's changed on it. So I prefer to mix them Monday or Tuesday,
Okay.
but I let them room up to warm temperature. So what I do is Friday morning when I'm leaving, they go into an ice chest, and I have an ice chest for my injections and sauces, and that goes into the trailer, and they stay there all day. They're not cold anymore. By the time I get there, they should be room temperature, depending on how hot it is outside.
Right.
So, but I'll mix them. I'll give them a 30-minute wait after I shake them up, and I'll put them right in the meat as well. So it doesn't either way is fine with me.
Yeah. I just noticed how they are thicker. No, it was interesting that you said that. So I was trying to find that perfect medium of, is it too
And I can
thick?
help you out with that. I mean, sometimes I tell people is when you see something, it doesn't look right, then investigate why. Um,
Yeah.
I think one guy texted me one day. He said, "Hey man, you got a problem with your injection. This not supposed to be this thick." And he could have turned like a blizzard, right, from Dairy Queen. He could have flipped it upside down, and it wouldn't have went anywhere. Uh, as the conversation went on, come to find out, he misread the instructions. Put a cup of injection to 16 ounces of liquid. Well, I mean, that's basically the same. I mean, anyways, it was pretty thick. So I told him multiply it times 4, that much liquid in there, and use
Yeah.
it. But I mean, if it's too thick, add a little more liquid to it. Simple.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know how thick you were trying to go with it. So,
well, and that's the thing, is that it's all about the flavor.
Yeah. Okay.
The more injection you use, the stouter it's going to be.
Gotcha.
If you're a guy that's using 2 injections, like a lot of guys do, if you're using 2 types of injections, one injection may be a little stouter. So the more you add of one, it can outset the flavor of the other. So you got to find that balance. But you can take 3 tablespoons of my beef injection and stick it in 20 ounces of beef broth, and it's going to give you a good day.
Yeah.
It's simple. I mean, it's just a simple recipe, and it's going to get you a lot of places. But as a cook, cooks have to be cooks, not recipes, and so they have to figure out what's that formula going to be.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, I do all kinds of stuff to mine too. But anyway, is there any other? So you said you have a sauce coming out soon?
We got a sauce coming out. So we've been in the catering business since 2012. 3 years ago, I needed a sauce for a catering job. We were doing, I think we did the George Bush Foundation here in Texas, here in Midland at one of the event centers, and so we were doing, I can't remember if it was brisket and sausage, or it was something kind of simple, but it was about 500 people. Needed a barbecue sauce, and to buy sauce for that many people, it's kind of hard to do last minute when the catering job comes up and you're trying to get all the rest of your stuff done. So we started mixing a barbecue sauce, something plain and simple, nothing really overpowering. That recipe traveled itself over the next 6 months, and it became the recipe that we use now in the restaurant, the Half Acre. So as we started mixing it, it was like 4 gallons sit in the refrigerator. Use it all up, and then I kept going. And in 2018, I left my job in the oil field to do food full time, to cook barbecue. So when I did, as we got everything kind of situated, we made the recipe, we made the sauce, and it spawned into the restaurant, which is 15 gallons a week. And so we hand batch that, and that recipe's been the same. I've gone through a lot of people that try to get this recipe in a bottle for the last 2 years. And now we're successful, so we ought to have, in about probably 3 weeks, we ought to have sauce hitting our warehouse.
Good.
So it's been kind of a long process, but I've been excited to get there.
Sounds like we'll be placing an order for all kind of stuff here the next few weeks. It'll be good. All right. So is there anything else you want to talk about on the product side for Texas Oil Dust?
No, man, just I appreciate all the support, and I hope people keep themselves open to other products coming out and other flavors. We got a steak seasoning. We moved the oil dust to an all-purpose because it's really used for everything. But I have a steak seasoning that we've been using for 2 years. I've been using it in competitions, like kind of the non-sanctioned competitions, where it's just you got a sanctioned competition, but it's a steak that's not an SCA or something like that. And we've done really well. Then we've got some people in the SCA that have been using it as well, doing really good. So we've been competing in that, and I have a steak season that are probably within, I'd say, the next 6 to 8 months. I'll go ahead and pull the trigger on it, and we'll put that in a bottle. And when we do, it's going to give you something that you're not ready for.
That must be what Paul Whitaker is talking about. Must be talking about
what's old Paul saying? Hey, Paul, thanks for the Jim Beam. I appreciate it.
Marvin said that the oil dust is by far the best steak rub made, and Paul said, "Just wait till the new one's coming out. You're really gonna like it." So,
well, that new one hit first place in Vernon, Texas, just a few weeks ago, and it's got multiple wins, but it's not an SCA rub, right? So it's not something that's on the SCA circuit, and that's why we've been doing them here lately. We've been kind of going here and there and playing with it. Some guys do good and some guys don't, and it's just what table you land on, the flavors, and sometimes it just isn't your day. But at the end of the day, if you're consistent, then the flavor should come out, and if that flavor's there, it's going to hit. So I mean, I'm hoping we'll have some more success with it as time goes on.
Great, that's awesome. Well, I know last weekend was a big weekend for the IBCA. I saw everybody talking about it out there. And as we were talking beforehand, I wanted to talk about the Texas cook teams. I don't I the top 10 in the IBCA read off like some of the best cook teams in KCBS also. So talk a little bit about the Texas cooking going on out there. What are y'all doing out there that makes everybody so good at cooking and transfer? Because from what I understand, IBCA and KCBS are not even anywhere remotely close to the same.
Well, you hear the saying, "Good barbecue is good barbecue."
Right.
Well, we cook good barbecue down here in Texas, just like you guys do in Atlanta. You know, um, that's the one thing that still keeps barbecue the same is that no matter where you go, it's good barbecue still should overcome. Um, the guys in the top 10 or the guys in IBCA or Lone Star, whoever, but IBCA period, they're a great group of guys. They're all big time family oriented. Somebody got somebody started. Somebody took somebody with them. But at the end of the day, you walk by, you shake hands, you give a big old bro hug, and you say, "Hey, how's it going? How's the family?" And you move on. Okay. The guys on that top 10 list, I would say over 50% of them have been on that same list for 2 or 3 years that I know of. I made the top 10 last year. I was lucky enough to make it again this year. Philip Breeden, number one cook, points chase. He had a bang up year, and I'm proud of that guy. He's done really good, and he was on there last year and the year before, I believe. So, you know, Lee Hickle, Philip Breeden, Jason Sagmiller, Bill Purvis, Tommy Smith, Chuck Long. Um, those are the guys that you see every weekend, no matter where we go. We're always cooking together, but most of the time you'll see them in different places that, it may not be the same this weekend, but it'll be the same that, next weekend. And there's 4 or 5 of us that have been going, to KCBS because there wasn't a lot of IBCA or Lone Star going on. So you're trying to cook and you want to cook. So if you want to cook, you got to travel.
Right.
So gas up the old Dodge and let us see where it takes you because that's what we kind of do on a given weekend. So
Yeah.
those are strong cooks, and over and over and over again, they're very consistent. They have a great flavor because they've used that same flavor in other areas. I may not win a grand every cook off, and I may not get a reserve, but I'm going to get 1 or 2 walks, and that's
Right.
hard to do in any part of the state. So you have to find a flavor that's going to match, that's going to win. So to find a flavor that works in Houston, the same recipe works in North Texas, South Texas by the coast, or even West Texas by El Paso. If you can find that flavor that might hit, that's gonna give you a great recipe for success anywhere you're running to. So,
Right.
IBCA has a lot of good cooks. They say we're not pork cooks, but we do pretty damn good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. No, I mean that's Bill Purvis says he's a newbie. We know better than that, Bill. Vince called in and says, "Congrats to all." Um, but that's what's so neat is seeing. Sorry, excuse me. Seeing Lee and Bill and you and Phil and Fred, all you guys going all over the country. And what you just said makes a lot of sense. If you can cook in the north, the south, the east, and the west of Texas, you have pretty much all of the country covered, right? I mean, I mean, it covers everything. I feel like. I mean,
Yeah.
if East Texas is going to be like it is over here, and the southeast and north, you got the Midwest, and it's pretty cool how that all translates. And if you can make everybody in Texas like your food, you got a good shot at getting everybody around the country to like your food.
Right, right. And you have a lot of folks from the north. They call them snowbirds in the south, and they'll go down there for vacation during the wintertime when they get away from that cold, miserable snow up north. Well, then you got those guys kicking down the valley. So those guys get to change their flavors a little bit when those folks come down for the wintertime. It's a different flavor, and they may have to adjust. They might not have to adjust.
Right.
Gives you an idea, but the same recipe, the same flavor might work just as good in Wisconsin and North Dakota and some of those areas up there because that's where they're from. That's where their judges are from. So, I mean, you don't know where you're going to be until you go do it. You just roll the dice and hope like heck that your barbecue is good enough to make you get some walks, if not win. And compete against Brad and, Joe Pierce and Matt Alexander, Walker, those guys cook all the time, and so we have to go up there with already at a deficit because they're just Texas cooks, you know.
Yeah.
They're out of their way, they're out of their region, so we have to prove them wrong, and sometimes that's funner than it is actually walking. Is that, hey, I placed a higher point than you because we weren't supposed to. We weren't supposed to get out of our chair, and sometimes we do, and that's a big day for us.
So Lee Hickle just made a comment. It seems the transition from IBCA to KCBS is possibly easier than the other way around. You want to, Lee, expound on that if you want to. But Aaron, if you want to have something, if you have anything that you want to add to that, explain why you think that could possibly be.
Well, the transition isn't that hard. It's learn a few trimming techniques, right? Learn how to trim some chicken thighs, or learn how to trim legs. I cook legs. Matter of fact, it wasn't for Lee Hickle, I never would have tried my first set of legs at Bedford, and I hit a 180 that weekend. So if it wasn't for Lee's advice on how to do a chicken leg, and I said, screw it, let's do it. What's it going to cost me? I mean, I have nothing to lose, right? And
right.
Pork butt, it's trimming, but it's still good flavors. It's still good food, so we don't have to worry about the flavors as much as we do just the trimming techniques. We got to put that parsley, or got to put some kale in the box, but it's not as hard of a transition for us as it is a KCBS cook having to learn how to cook something more tender, how to get past that. I'm not sure about this, Mark, or making his chicken, cooking a half chicken. Chicken and a half chicken is not as difficult as people make it out to be. You just have to know when it's ready, when to temp it, and how to trim it. That's about it. But you're cooking a whole chicken, not 12 thighs or 12 legs. So the legs part of it, the ribs are about the same. It's a tenderness game for the guys in KCBS. Us, we can just back it off a little bit and say, yeah, it'll work. Throw it in the box. KCBS, they're going to pull it as a KCBS tenderness, and it's not going to get them past the first round because they're using knives and forks. So they're not picking it up and eating it. So I think IBCA guys, Texas cooks, can adjust quicker to a KCBS guidelines than the KCBS guys can adjust to IBCA. So, and that's it's been proven a few times that the KCBS guys cooking IBCA don't do near as good as the IBCA guys cooking that KCBS contest. I may have said that wrong, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
That makes sense. I mean, what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense, and that's kind of, from what I understand about the IBCA, it's a tenderness game, and it's a game of what does the food taste like when it's cold, because it's going to be so long before the judges try it, and this, that, and the other. But I'm sure that makes a lot of sense what you all said.
Yeah.
IBCA judges are not trained. Well,
you're cooking for the public. You're
right.
not cooking for a trained judge. And that's
right.
a good thing, because I know some of y'all's KCBS judges, they might be trained, but they ain't got a taste bud in their mouth.
That's true. I tried cooking KCBS recipes and never got out of my chair, but I can run my IBCA recipes and walk. So I've heard somebody tell me in the past that MBN flavor profiles are through the roof. Very strong flavor profiles. It's got to have a huge pop, and everything in KCBS. You always hear, any class you go to, anything you ever do is, we want down the middle. We don't want we don't need to offend anybody. Is that something that is different in IBCA? Are y'all looking for that pop? Because I know all of your injections are super flavorful. And the way you've described them all is to have that pop come out. Is that something that you think is different?
I would love to hit a first place every time I go out. I mean, that's anybody's dream, right? Is knock that first place bird or brisket or rib out. But in all honesty, that's not where you get your points from. You get your points from being 3 consecutive walks. Okay, if you're the only cook at a 75 team cook-off that walks in brisket, ribs, and chicken, the odds of you winning that contest is going to be pretty good.
Right.
You're looking for middle of the road, but you're not looking for that big pop wow flavor. If it comes, it comes. If that first place called because your product was just that good, that's going to happen. It can be your day. But if you get a third, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with a third, a fifth, and a second, or a third, fifth, and a seventh, because chances are I might make the top three in that cook-off and make some money. Because most cook-offs pay in top five. Some pay top three, some pay top five, maybe some pay top 10. But if you can get those consecutive middle of the road calls, you might make some money. And then by the time the points add up, just like KCBS, by the time they average those scores up, that middle of the road flavor can get you in that top five category, or if not the win. So, you're
Yeah.
not looking for first place, a hat trick. Happens every now and then, but you're not looking for that. You're looking for middle of the road, second to seventh era, and then try to get those points accumulated. But you want all three walks. That's
That
a
was
bigger
what,
accomplishment to get 3 nines. 3 ninth place walks can be better than 1 first place bird. And
right.
it's not talking about points. I'm talking about accomplishment, because you had 3 consecutive flavors that walked in a team of 75 or 100. That's a big win. So,
Yeah, that's what's kind of funny about it is Matt Walker, Boomerang Barbecue. We had him on a couple weeks ago with Robert and Paul. Well, I guess it was all Boomerang, Rooters, Tooters, and Smoke Me Sillies. They were all talking about the thing that I've had more people comment about was Matt's comment of, "I'm not there to win a category. I'm there to win a contest."
right.
And that being the same thing of, I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize me losing that contest. So if and it was during the burn-ins section of our conversations, like, I'm not going to put in burn-ins. Yes, I might win with those burn-ins, but it also might kill
Sure.
me, and I'm not going to, and I just lost the whole contest. So that seems to be the same thing. What you're saying is, be consistent on all parts of the cook.
Yeah. Don't go for the big wow factor unless you have nothing to lose and you only cook a couple times a year. If you're a seasoned cook and you're cooking more than 15 events and you might be in the points chase, sometimes that big wow factor will be over the top. It'll be too much. So if you're really looking for it, you might tone it down just a little bit, because you don't want to take those big chances that might get you knocked out. A first place rib can be in your category, but if you get 11th place rib, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
You're so you want to make sure that it's smooth, it tastes good, it hits the marks, but it's not such over the top that it knocks you out into the final round and you don't even make the top 10.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So it goes on, and it sounds like that goes on everywhere. I do have one question. You've mentioned Lone Star. What is the Lone Star? Is that another sanctioning body in Texas?
It's another sanctioned body in Texas.
So what kind of?
It's a small. They're a smaller organization, but they have had some cook-offs in the slow time when other cook-offs weren't available. So they got some extra push, for that. But it's just another sanctioned body. They do the same thing. They cook two half chickens. I think they do 7 ribs and 7 brisket. So, it's just another sanctioned body like Central Texas Barbecue Association, Corey Mikes and those guys. They have that as well. So
Okay.
when there's not a cook-off, the first thing people do is start searching, right? They start Googling, searching all the forums. And I have 4 icons: KCBS, Lone Star, IBCA, and Central Texas. And I think I've even just added the BCA. And the Louisiana section, because when you're searching, what can I do this weekend? Do I want to stay home and do yard work, or help mom with the house? I want to try to get out of here and go cook a cook-off. So you start looking, and so it gives you availabilities and options. But they have state championships as well. They got some good cook-offs, and a lot of teams will show up. Sometimes it's just too small of an event, but yeah, they're just another event organization.
So if you had your choice of cooking, what would be your number one sanctioning body that you would cook?
Well, I've been cooking IBCA for roughly 6 years. 5 years. Now this will be the 6th year. I've enjoyed cooking IBCA because of the consistency, but here lately, I've had 6 pretty consecutive KCBS events, and I'm starting to really enjoy the double headers. Not the singles as much, but I like the doubles. I
Yeah.
like waking up and doing it right again the next day. I like the fast pace of it, and then getting home and hauling rear on Sunday afternoon. So if I'm going to have a druther, it's going to be IBCA. But I'm looking really hard at that KCBS event, trying to decide if I can get there and go. Just because I enjoy the cooking establishment,
Right.
I'm also liking the people that are cooking there.
Yeah. I think that if anything has happened through the COVID times, is it seems like there's been more doubles popping up. Where a lot of contests were just one contest. Now they're adding to it, making it a double. And if anything happens through this, I hope that continues. I hope contests continue with that, because I like the double aspect also. I think it's cool. If you want to cook one, just go cook one, but make it be a double if it's at all possible. Go for it, because I think that's been a lot of
My
fun.
main goal is to cook qualifiers. I want to go to the Jack. The only way to go to the Jack is cook a qualifier. It's got to hit 25 in the state championship, or it's got to hit 50, and it'll over 50 teams will make the qualifier. So KCBS is guaranteed, right? It's a blanket, so it's already there. So if there's an event 10 hours away for KCBS in a double, and there's a cook-off 5 hours away that's an IBCA event, chances are I'm going 10 hours to KCBS now, because I want more shots at trying to go to the Jack. That's my bucket list. That's the only thing that I'm working for, is the KCBS, or not KCBS, the Jack Daniels. That's the only thing I'm working for. And if KCBS helps me get there, I'll figure it out. I won't go all year with no wins, but I'll figure it out. But that's that's the beauty of it. But that's my only goal. I don't have any other goal in mind.
That's right. And I'm looking forward to it. Next week, Emily from KCBS is supposed to come back on next week. So I'm really looking forward to, we've got a lot of questions to ask her. A lot of things have come up. And they just came out with a new points chase. But speaking of points chase, have you been following the KCBS points chase throughout?
A little bit, just because I've been cooking them here lately. I've been watching Joe and Brad, and those guys kind of flip flopping a little bit. Matt's kind of slowly getting back up in there. It's a fun thing to watch, because every weekend they're almost trading places.
It is. It's so much fun. I haven't had a chance today to look at the results, but it's so much fun to watch this whole thing. And this weekend is going to be it's ending this weekend. So I know there's a double in Virginia, Friday, Saturday double instead of Saturday, Sunday double. And that's going to be cool to see. This thing is going to go down to the wire, I'm pretty sure.
I think they're going to have over 100 teams at Osage, right?
I'm sure.
I heard the spot opened up. I wanted to go, but I done paid for there's a state SCA this weekend.
Okay.
In Dallas Fort Worth. So there's 4 state cook-offs this weekend, 3 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. So we're going to go do a triple and have some fun, do something different. Or I would be trying to go ahead and travel up to Osage if that spot came open, but that's okay. There's going to be quite a few a little closer, starting a new season. So
yeah, it starts next week, I guess, or this weekend if there's any Sundays. But it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to watch, and I've thoroughly enjoyed keeping up with it and talking about it on Chewin the BBQ Fat, because that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun keeping up with everything and watching these guys all of a sudden go from one, to look like man meat had it under control, and then somebody else comes in, and somebody, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see what happens. But I don't.
You made the comment earlier, and I watched your episode with Matt about leaving the burn ends out. And we were at Oklahoma, and both days on that championship, we did instead of the Royal, that double header. I had a really good brisket. The brisket was, it's like any other weekend, right? It tastes good. It hits all the marks. You're liking it, but your gut tells you, and that's where you screw up, is you go for first place. I want to go for that 180. I want to have that overall appearance and that look. And I had like a, 40-something brisket, because I put burn ends in the box. Now, I'm very good at burn ends, and I'm still trying to figure them out. They might have been too much. It could have been overdone. So the next day, I talked to Fred that night. He's like, Aaron, what happened to your brisket, man? You're doing good. I said, I put burn ends in a box. And he said, well, quit. So the next day, what I do, I drop a burn end up there, and it jiggles like a little square of Jello. I'm thinking, I'm all excited about it. And then in my gut, I'm like, Fred said leave them out. Fred said leave them out. What I do, I put 6 of them in that sucker. I went up. I didn't go any closer to one. I went up in the pair. I was like, gosh, okay, that's it. No more burn ins. And, we went to Wyoming shortly after that and had better calls. I had like a middle of the road 18th, and then I hit a 10th on my brisket. So that being said, I quit doing burn ins. No more. I don't even cut my brisket for burn ins. I do an IBCA trim with a slightly less flat point in so that I can still cook it hot. Now I'm cooking on a drum at 400 degrees. So I'm going to cook it hot and then tone it down so it's not going to mess that bottom section up. But, so now when Matt made that comment, sometimes he'll trim for no burn-ins, and sometimes he will. I quit. I've done no more burn-ins for me. And I think a 180 brisket with no burn-ins this weekend at Oklahoma, I think I saw the pictures on it. So I think Jeremy Cortez had a 180. So you don't need burn-ins in a box to get a 180 brisket.
I'm with Nathan Dexter. Nathan Dexter just said, "Leave the point at home." That's all. I'm with you.
Make sausage with it. Don't take it with you.
Exactly. So, what is the Texas trim? I mean, I think Matt was talking about that also. Is the Texas trim where you're leaving the point on the bottom?
Yeah. So you can, if you took that brisket and laid it top to bottom on your cutting board, decals on the right or the left. If you were to just tombstone the top like a headstone, and then bring the bottom down and kind of curve it on the bottom a little bit, you're going to have a square brisket where the grain can run from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? Or it can be like 11 to 5.
Yeah.
And then when you trim that brisket out and you narrow it to fit the box, then you can turn it over. And as you cut that point off the bottom, that brisket will widen up. So when you get done, that brisket will fit the box. It'll have a rounded kind of tombstone effect on the top, squared on the bottom, and then your grain will run, kind of at an angle. It gives you a little more play, gives you just a little bit more. If you overcook it, it's going to stay together a little bit more. But also the same thing with KCBS, they're cooking their grain running 12 to 6. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of guys still do the same thing in IBCA. They cook that, or Texas. They cook that brisket the same way an IBCA brisket would be trimmed, and they do the same deal. So, I mean, there's 2 ways to do your briskets. Some guys throw it out there, cook the whole brisket, they dock the ends, put it in the box. Some guys will trim their brisket to fit the box. But me, I like my grain, going from 1 to 7 or 11 to 5. I mean, I like it going at an angle so that when I cut it, I had that little bit of that slant.
Yeah.
It holds together more, but I can overcook that brisket.
Makes sense.
So
there you go.
I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, there's a lot of pictures out there on the internet. And Clarence Joseph, he's the one that taught me how to really cook a brisket and how to trim that brisket. That brisket's going to swell. A lot of guys notice it kind of widens out at the ends. Sometimes it folds itself over. Sometimes it shrinks and goes tall. How you trim your brisket can determine how that brisket ends up before you put it in the box. So there's lots of ways that you can get around that to fat swell, especially these Wagyus that we're cooking these days, Wagyu cross, full bloods, whatever. Mm-hmm. They all have a different way of turning and twisting. So depending on how you make that brisket trim, but that Texas trim has that point meat and about a 1/4 inch of fat across the bottom of it.
Okay. Man.
Yeah.
Ready to go cook a brisket. So, well, good.
You can cut that off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then make it look good at the end. Well, awesome. Is there anything else that you want to talk about tonight, or how can people get in touch with you, or is there anything you want to push? Your Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter?
Well, you can look us up at TexasOilDust.com on our website. We have a full website with all of our products listed. We ship as fast as we can. We all have jobs, so sometimes I may not get it out the same day. I try, but if you order at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously it's not going to go out the same day. But I have my truck. I got a new truck now, but my truck is a full mobile office. I've got 40 cases of rub, and Paul and those guys can contest to this. I keep all of my rubs and injections in the back seat. I've got a printer. got my cell phone. I do QuickBooks and all my orders, and I've got packaging and everything in my truck. So at the restaurant, when I catch a free time, I catch up on orders. I get them going, so all I got to do is drop them off. So I'm constantly working from my truck. If I go out of town to a cook-off, I'm doing the same thing. So you can look us up at TexasOilDust.com. You can reach out to us and message on Facebook, Instagram, Texas Oil Dust at Instagram, and then you can reach us at TexasOilDust@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us by email. But you can email us through our website, ask us any questions you got. We'll get to you.
Awesome.
That's about it.
Man, I appreciate
my
you
phone
so
number. My phone number is on every bottle of rub that you buy. So you can reach me. Just don't call me at night. I'm sleeping. But you can reach me throughout the day anytime. Just call my phone number. I'll answer you. Text me.
Awesome.
You know, everybody's got to learn somehow.
That's right. Yeah, man.
Spread the love.
That's right. Aaron, I appreciate you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you all for watching. And I'm glad that we could talk about your products. I think you have some of the best products on the market, and I have pushed them from day one. And I just appreciate all that you do for us and everything else. But hope you have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, we have Emily Detweiler coming on from KCBS. So y'all join us in next week and send me more questions, and we'll make sure we get them in there. But thanks a lot, everybody.
Stay dusty, my friends.
That's right. Stay dusty. All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great night.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.